I honestly don't know what to do anymore. My husband Derek and I are both 34, and we welcomed our daughter last July after what felt like an endless journey through infertility treatments. 3 years of IVF, countless appointments, failed cycles, and more tears than I can count. When she finally arrived, it felt like a miracle we'd been waiting our entire lives for. During those long years of trying, Derek and I spent countless nights talking about baby names. We'd lie in bed, hopeful and terrified at the same time, planning for a future we weren't sure would ever come. We finally settled on a name we both loved, one that felt meaningful and beautiful. Her first name, Paloma, is Spanish for dove. It's unique but not so out there that people stumble over it. Her middle name is Esperanza, which means hope, and honestly, after everything we'd been through, it felt perfect. We also decided early on that our daughter would carry my last name, Ramirez, instead of Derek's. I'd kept my maiden name when we married, and after everything my body had been through with the IVF, the failed attempts, the hormones, the procedures, Derek felt strongly that I'd earned the right to pass on my name. There was another reason too. Derek's father had been abusive, the kind of man who left scars that don't show on the surface. He'd passed away a few years back, and Derek had cut ties with that entire side of his family long before I met him. The thought of passing on that family name made him physically uncomfortable. His mother, Patricia, had remarried decades ago and didn't even carry that name anymore, so we figured it wouldn't be an issue. I was incredibly superstitious during my pregnancy. After so many losses and disappointments, I couldn't bring myself to say our baby's name out loud before she was born. It felt like tempting fate. So we kept it completely secret from everyone, including family. Paloma's arrival was traumatic in ways I'm still processing. At 34 weeks, I developed severe preeclampsia. My blood pressure skyrocketed, and suddenly we were racing against time. I labored for 40 excruciating hours before the doctors decided on an emergency cesarean section. Those hours are a blur of pain and fear, Derek's hand in mine, monitors beeping, nurses rushing in and out. When they finally pulled her out, 6 weeks earlier than expected, the relief was so overwhelming I sobbed. Once we knew Paloma was stable, Derek texted his mother a photo. "Meet Paloma Esperanza Ramirez," he wrote. "Mom and baby are doing well." I expected congratulations, or excitement, or concern for my health. What we got was shocking. Patricia's response came through within minutes. "Oh, I would have named her Esperanza Nicole Rodriguez." That's it. No congratulations. No asking how I was doing after major surgery. No acknowledgement of her granddaughter's actual name. Just criticism and her own alternative version. Derek stared at his phone in disbelief. I was still in recovery, exhausted and hormonal, and I just felt this wave of hurt wash over me. But we were too overwhelmed with new parent exhaustion to address it right away. That's when the pattern started. Every single text message from Patricia referred to our daughter as Esperanza or just the baby. Never Paloma. Every phone call, every conversation. "How's Esperanza doing? Is Esperanza sleeping through the night? Send me more pictures of Esperanza." At first, Derek and I gently corrected her each time. "Her name is Paloma, Mom. Actually, we call her Paloma." "Paloma is doing great, thanks for asking." Nothing changed. After 2 weeks of this, Derek called his mother and asked her directly to please use Paloma's first name. Patricia apologized, said she understood, promised she'd do better. I actually felt hopeful that maybe she'd just needed that direct conversation. She didn't do better. In fact, she didn't change at all. Every message still said Esperanza. Derek corrected her every single time, and every single time she'd either ignore it or send a thumbs-up emoji and then continue using the wrong name in the next message. When Christmas came around, we drove 2 hours to Patricia's house in Sacramento for the family gathering. Paloma was 5 months old by then, this perfect little person with Derek's dark eyes and my smile. I was actually excited to celebrate her first Christmas with family, to see her surrounded by people who loved her. We walked in with Paloma in her carrier, and Patricia immediately came over, cooing and reaching for her. The house smelled like tamales and pine, Christmas music playing in the background. Derek's stepfather Mark was friendly as always, and his sister Caroline gave us big hugs. Then came present time. Derek's nephews, Caroline's boys, started pulling gifts from under the tree and reading names. "This one's for Esperanza," 7-year-old Mason called out. Then another. "Esperanza." And another. "This is for Esperanza too." Every single gift Patricia had bought for our daughter had tags that read Esperanza Rodriguez. Not even the compromise of using her middle name with my last name. Rodriguez. Derek's father's last name. The name Derek had specifically chosen not to pass on. I felt my face get hot. Derek's jaw clenched. I tried to keep my voice light, but I couldn't help myself. "Oh, are you sure these are for Paloma?" I said loudly enough for Patricia to hear across the room. "They don't seem to have her name on them." Patricia looked at me, and for just a second, I saw something cold flash across her face before she smiled and said, "Oh, you know what I meant." But that was the thing. I did know what she meant. She was telling us, deliberately and repeatedly, that she didn't accept our choice. That she knew better. That our daughter's name, the name we'd carefully chosen to honor Derek's Mexican heritage, the name that meant something to us, wasn't good enough for her. What made it even more confusing was that Patricia is Mexican-American herself. Derek looks like his mom, with brown skin and dark features that clearly reflect his heritage. And yet Patricia had given him the most generic Anglo name imaginable. Think something like Christopher James or Michael Robert. When Derek asked her once why she'd chosen such an Anglo name, she'd said she wanted him to fit in and have an easier time in life. We'd chosen a Spanish name specifically to honor that part of Derek's identity, something Patricia herself had downplayed throughout his childhood. I thought she'd be proud that we were embracing rather than hiding his heritage. Instead, she seemed almost offended by it. We left Patricia's house that Christmas Day earlier than planned, both of us quiet and hurt. In the car, Derek finally said what we'd both been thinking. "I don't understand why she's doing this. It's so deliberately disrespectful." Over the next few weeks, I started researching online, reading forums and posts from other people dealing with difficult in-laws. The advice ranged from "ignore it," "she'll come around," to "cut her off completely." I felt stuck because everything else about Patricia's relationship with us had been fine. She wasn't overbearing, didn't show up uninvited, didn't criticize my parenting. This name thing was the one issue, but it was such a fundamental one. Our daughter's identity, her name, the thing we'd call her for the rest of her life. I started employing some of the tactics I'd read about. When Patricia would text asking about Esperanza, I'd wait a while before responding, and when I did, I'd only reference Paloma in my response. When she'd say "How's Esperanza?" on the phone, I'd pause and say, "Who?" and wait for her to correct herself. It made things awkward, but nothing changed. Derek was getting increasingly frustrated. His mother had always been his champion growing up, the one who protected him from his father's rage, who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. He loved her deeply. But this felt like a betrayal of something fundamental, an unwillingness to see him as an adult capable of making his own decisions. We decided we needed to confront this head-on. Patricia's birthday was coming up in early February, and there would be a family gathering at her house. Derek and I talked through our approach. He would ask to speak with her privately, be direct about how hurtful her behavior was, and make it clear that respecting our parenting decisions was non-negotiable if she wanted to maintain a close relationship with Paloma. We drove to Sacramento that Saturday afternoon with Paloma, who was now 7 months old and starting to babble and reach for everything. I'd dressed her in this adorable little dress with flowers on it, and despite my anxiety about the confrontation, I felt hopeful that maybe today we'd finally break through. Patricia greeted us at the door with her usual warmth, immediately reaching for Paloma. Can I hold my grandbaby? She asked with a smile. Of course, Derek said, carefully transferring Paloma into her arms. Patricia immediately turned and walked toward the adjoining den, and we followed her inside, setting down the diaper bag and the birthday gift we'd brought. I was pulling out Paloma's bottle when I heard Patricia's voice from the other room, bright and cheerful. Look who's here. Meet your Uncle Brian. Everything stopped. Derek's face went completely white. Without a word, he bolted into the den. I followed, my heart pounding, and saw exactly what I feared. Patricia was standing there holding Paloma, angling her toward a man I'd only seen in photographs, a man Derek hadn't spoken to in over 3 years. Brian. Derek's cousin. The cousin who had stolen Derek's identity 3 years ago. The cousin who had given Derek's name and information during a drug-related arrest, leading to warrants being issued for Derek's arrest. I'll never forget the night Derek called me, panicked, from the side of the road where he'd been pulled over for a broken taillight. They're saying there are warrants out for my arrest, he'd said, his voice shaking. Multiple charges. Failure to appear. It had taken weeks to sort out. As an attorney, I'd been able to navigate the legal system, provide affidavits about Derek's whereabouts, get the prosecutor to review the arrest photos that clearly showed someone who wasn't Derek. The charges were eventually dropped, but the stress and violation of it had been enormous. Brian had never apologized. Never acknowledged what he'd done. He'd been in and out of Derek's life since childhood, always causing chaos, always taking and never giving. Derek had tried for years to maintain some connection, hoping his cousin would turn his life around, but after the identity theft, Derek was done. He'd sent Patricia a long message, worked out with his therapist, explaining that he needed to go no contact with Brian and asking her to respect that boundary. She'd agreed. For 3 years, she'd respected it. Until now. What the hell, Mom? Derek's voice was low and shaking as he crossed the room and took Paloma from Patricia's arms. Patricia's face was defiant. He's family, Derek. He wanted to meet his niece. You can't keep her from family forever. He's not her uncle, Derek said, his voice getting louder. He's a stranger who stole my identity and almost destroyed my life. Give me my daughter. I was already moving, taking Paloma from Derek's arms and heading straight for the front door. Behind me, I could hear Derek and Patricia arguing, his voice cracking with anger and hurt. I got Paloma buckled into her car seat, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the straps. Derek came out minutes later, his face red, carrying all our stuff. He got in the driver's seat without a word and we drove away. The drive home was silent. Derek gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. I reached over and put my hand on his leg, and he briefly covered it with his own hand, but he didn't speak. I understood. Sometimes there are no words for betrayal that deep. We gave it a day before we talked. Sunday morning, after Paloma went down for her nap, Derek and I sat at our kitchen table with coffee and finally addressed what had happened. I can't believe she did that, Derek said quietly, staring into his mug. I trusted her. I asked her for one thing, one boundary, and she completely trampled it. She used our daughter to try to orchestrate some kind of reunion that I never wanted and explicitly told her I didn't want. I know, I said. And honestly, Derek, I'm not comfortable with her being around Paloma anymore. Not after this. It's not just about being rude with the name anymore. She's shown that she doesn't respect our boundaries, even when it comes to our daughter's safety. Derek nodded slowly. Brian's not safe. He's not stable. He's made choices that hurt me and could have ruined my life. The idea of him being anywhere near Paloma makes me sick. So what do you want to do? I asked gently. Derek was quiet for a long time. I think we need to put her on timeout. No visits, no contact, until she can prove she understands how serious this is. And even then, I don't know if I can trust her to be alone with Paloma. Ever. My heart broke for him. I knew how much he loved his mother, how much she'd sacrificed for him growing up. But I also knew he was right. I think that's wise, I said. And I think maybe it would help if you started seeing your therapist again. This is a lot to process. He nodded. Yeah. I think I need to. It's been a few weeks since that day, and we haven't had any contact with Patricia. She sent several texts asking about Esperanza, asking when she can see the baby again, acting like nothing happened. Derek hasn't responded. What breaks my heart is realizing that the name issue was never really about the name at all. It was about control. Patricia wanted to control who our daughter was, what she was called, who she was exposed to. When we wouldn't let her control the name, she escalated to trying to control who we allowed into Paloma's life, consequences be damned. I look at Paloma now, this beautiful little person who's starting to pull herself up on furniture and laugh at peekaboo, and I think about how fiercely we need to protect her. Not just from obvious dangers, but from people who claim to love her while disrespecting her parents at every turn. Derek and I are committed to putting our daughter first, even when it means establishing painful boundaries with people we love. Paloma deserves to grow up knowing her name matters, that her identity is respected, and that the adults in her life will protect her even when it's hard. Patricia hasn't earned the privilege of being in our daughter's life right now. Maybe someday she will. But until she can respect us as parents and honor the boundaries we've set, we're choosing to keep our little family safe. Paloma Esperanza Ramirez. That's our daughter's name. And it's beautiful.